Silver Trumpet, Volume 1, Number 4, New Moon, 8th month, October 26, 2014. Inside cover. Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Make 2 trumpets of silver. You are to make them from a single hammered piece, and they shall be for assembling the community and for directing the traveling of the camps. When they blow them both, all the community must come to you, to the entrance of the tent of meeting. But if they blow with 1 trumpet, then the leaders, the heads of the thousands of Israel, must assemble themselves. When you blow an alarm, then the camps that are located on the east side must begin to move. And when you blow an alarm the second time, then the camps that are located on the south side must begin to move. An alarm must be sounded for their journeys. But when you assemble the community, you must blow, but you must not sound an alarm. The sons of Aaron the priests must blow the trumpets, and they will be to you for an eternal ordinance throughout your generations. If you go to war in your land against an adversary who opposes you, then you must sound an alarm with the trumpets, and you will be remembered before Yahweh, your Elohim, and you will be saved from your enemies. Also, in the time when you rejoice, such as on your appointed festivals and at the beginnings of your months, you must blow with your trumpets over your burnt offerings and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, so that they may be a memorial for you before your Elohim. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Numbers 10, 1-10. Page 1. The Garments of Holiness by Trent Wildy. In this latter-day call to priestly consecration, all willing souls are invited to be clothed with a set of new garments. A new character is being offered to you, and all you must do to receive it is to allow the angel of Yahweh to remove your old one, wash you of all its filthy residue, and place this new one upon you. If you decide to be willing to give up your old garments and consent to be washed and clothed, there will be nothing that can be nothing which would or could possibly prevent your reception of this new character. The enemy, knowing this, has set his course at finding any and every possible way to impede each individual from making this decision. Since there is no legitimate reason for resisting the garment change, Satan has resorted to propping up various lies which, if accepted, give the deceived one a false construction of reality, one in which there is no need for new garments or no way of receiving them. Some are deceived into thinking that wearing filthy garments is a great thing, that there is something appealing or even cool about it. Some, or such as the mind of the outright opposer of truth, those who arrogantly and knowingly flaunt themselves before our heavenly family in rebellion. Others are convinced that it does not matter whether their garments are dirty or not. They figure everyone has garments as these anyways, so what is the use of changing them? Such is a mind, or is the mind, of the worldly person. There are others who are told that they can make their current garments look better by hanging costly ornaments on them and spraying perfume to cover the stench of their excrement. They work very hard to earn the money to buy these trinkets and charms, and then deck their bodies with them, satisfied that they are now beautifully clothed and worthy of love and adoration, despite the fact that they have neither washed nor changed. Such is the case for the professors of various world religions, which all find their roots in ancient paganism. Still others are led to believe that even though they have on filthy garments, God does not see it, because God himself, in the person of Jesus, has clean garments, and since he wears them, that is just as good as if the rest of us were wearing them too. It's all the same to God. Such is the deception which overshadows the world of Christendom with their doctrine of spurious holiness. Footnote at the bottom of page 1, Zechariah 3 verse 3 refers to unrighteousness as garments of, and it's a Hebrew word spelled Tsom, meaning excrement. See also Isaiah 64 verse 6 and Philippians 3 verse 8. Page 2. And yes, there are yet others. These, though clothed in filthy garments, do not themselves see nor believe it. The stench of their excrement appears to them to be a pleasant aroma, and the sight of their clothes seems to be beautiful, white, and spotless. This is the class of religionists who have been blinded with spiritual pride. Lastly, there are those who have been shown how filthy their garments really are, and who sincerely want the new garments. These are those who the devil knows have the greatest potential to choose to be willing and to receive the garment change. So he has worked especially hard to deceive this class. He tells them that the new garments are not so different from those they currently wear, and that even if they were to possess them, they would not be able to keep them unsoiled for very long. He tells them that they are too filthy and undesirable, and that until they undergo some change, our heavenly family will withhold the garments. My friends, all these are lies, and a lie is no truth. A lie is nothing, and there is therefore no reason to be deceived. Let the light of truth dispel the darkness. Behold the glory of our heavenly family, and see their love in the offer which they are now making to you, saying, I counsel you to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that ye may be rich, and white garments, that ye may be clothed, and that the shame of your nakedness do not appear. And anoint your eyes with eye salve, that ye may see. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous therefore, and repent. Behold, I stand at the door, and knock. If any man hear my voice, and open the door, I will come in to him, and will sup with him, and he with me. To the one that overcomes, I will grant to sit with me in my throne, even also as I overcame, and have sat down with my Father in his throne. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. Revelation 3, 18-22. The priestly garments. In the typical service, Aaron and his sons were clothed with special garments, each with their own significance. The record states, page 3, for Aaron's sons you are to make tunics, sashes, and headbands for glory and for beauty. You are to clothe them, your brother Aaron and his sons with him, and anoint them, and ordain them, and set them apart as holy, so that they may minister as my priests. Make for them linen undergarments to cover their naked bodies. They must cover from the waist to the thighs. These must be on Aaron and his sons when they enter to the tent of meeting, or when they approach the altar to minister in the holy place, so that they bear no iniquity and die. It is to be a perpetual ordinance for him and for his descendants after him. Exodus 28, verse 40-43. The overall point is that these garments were to be worn by the priests in order that they might do the work of the tabernacle. Since the purpose of the tabernacle is to remove sin from the camp, we can see that the antitypical significance of these garments is expressing the qualifications for the winning souls to Christ, which is the work of removing sin from Israel. Since the garments of the high priest include the regular priestly garb, our focus will be on his garments, as in so doing we will cover them all. The linen tunic, leggings, and headbands. As we discovered in the last issue of the Silver Trumpet, the garments represent the righteousness of Christ, imparted to the individual. The linen tunic, being a part of the set of garments, naturally carries the same meaning. That said, it will be well for us to be more specific, seeing as there are also other garments involved here, which likewise represent different aspects and manifestations of Christ's righteousness. The linen tunic, along with the leggings, was to be worn next to the skin, and was thus closer to the individual than any other garment. Both the tunic and the leggings were made of the same material and represent the same basic thing. Together, these formed a linen outfit which, being white, represented the pure truth as their clothing. The righteousness of Christ, which is pure, unadulterated truth. Your law is truth. Psalms 119, verse 142. Footnote number 2 at the page, bottom of page 3, Testimonies to Ministers, page 64. Page 4. He faithfully pours out righteousness, but a lying witness speaks deceit. Proverbs 12, verse 17. Paul states the matter, perhaps even more clearly, by speaking of the old man and the new man, as if they were different garments. You were taught concerning your former way of life to lay aside the old man, which is corrupt in accordance with the deceitful desires, to be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and to put on the new man, who has been created according to God, in righteousness and holiness that comes from truth. Ephesians 4, verse 22 to 24. The intended lesson, which being clothed with these garments is meant to convey, is that all who would become priests need to be clothed with the pure truth, the truth which only comes by inspiration. You must take the truth into your mind and allow it to renew you. Surround yourself with truth and let it be tightly fitted to you, even as the ancient tunic of linen was fitted to each priest. That's Exodus 28, verse 4. You must make the truth your own by personal experience. The leggings especially represent the truth carried out in the individual's walk. Where they go, where they are led, the tunic represents the truth carried out in all their works. What they do. The headband represents the truth brought into the mind, virtually affecting the thoughts. The sash. The sash was of fine twisted linen and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, the work of an embroiderer, just as the Lord had commanded Moses, Exodus 39, verse 29. This sash was worn over the linen tunic and kept it tightly held to the body of the priest. Whatever it may represent, then, it stands for the thing which keeps the righteousness of Christ upon the antitypical priest. It is a symbol of what keeps us from falling, a symbol of sanctification. The scriptures do not tell us much about the sash, but what they do tell us is highly significant. The primary instruction concerning the sash was the material which made it up, since we have already found what the fine linen represents, we have only to discover the meaning of the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. Footnote at the bottom of page 4. It's footnote number 3. This text clearly portrays righteousness as the opposite of deceit, thus implying that righteousness is truth. Page number 5. Other notable instances of the use of blue fabric are found in Numbers 4, verse 5 and 6, and Numbers 15, 38, and 39. In the former, a blue cloth was used to cover the Ark of the Covenant, the seat of the Shekinah, and the container of her law. In the latter, the blue thread was required as part of tassels which the children of Israel were to wear on the four corners of their garments, and look upon and remember all the commandments of Yahweh. Numbers 15, verse 39. The color blue was to remind Israel of the divine authority of the law, seeing as the throne of the goddess herself, the one who speaks the words of inspiration, is made of sapphire, a blue stone. Exodus 24, verse 10, Ezekiel 1, verse 26, and 10, verse 1. Scarlet is blood red, and would thus represent life, since the life of the flesh is in the blood. Leviticus 17, verse 11. The particular type of red used in this sash was taken from a worm, which had to be crushed to make the dye. It thus not only represents life itself, but life crushed out of a worm. A common symbol for a man. Job 25, 6, Psalms 22, 6, Isaiah 41, verse 14. The sacrifice of Christ is herein brought to view, especially in light of Psalms 22, 6, but it is by no means limited to his personal sacrifice, as we are also called to take up our cross and follow him. Matthew 16, verse 24, and make his death our own. Romans 6. Purple is a mixture of blue and scarlet, and thus symbolizes life mingled with the law. The meaning of this mingling is revealed in the fact that the altar of burnt offering was to be covered with a purple cloth. Numbers 14, verse 13. When a person would bring their sacrifice, they would have their sins symbolically transferred from themselves to the animal, and from the animal it was symbolically transferred via the blood onto the altar. The sin would thus be removed from the person and their representative, the animal, to the altar. The altar then was the place of atonement, removal of sin. From this we understand that purple is the color for atonement. To symbolize the sash represents the pillar truths of the gospel. Like the linen tunic, the sash was worn within other garments in the case of the high priest, and could not be seen by others. By this it symbolizes something very close and personal to the wearer. That is, it demonstrates the reality that the law, the life of Christ, his sacrifice, and his blood applied to redeem and atone for the sinner is personally relating to and affecting the individual. Footnote at the bottom of page 5, footnote number 4. This is shown from the fact that the word tolia for scarlet used here also means worm. Page number 6. It is this truth which will keep redeemed mankind from ever falling into sin again, and is the only safeguard the unfallen worlds have against apostasy. Not only man, but angels will ascribe honor and glory to the Redeemer, for even they are secure only through the sufferings of the Son of God. It is through the efficacy of the cross that the inhabitants of the unfallen worlds have been guarded from apostasy. It is this that has effectually unveiled the deceptions of Satan and refuted his claims. Not only those that are washed by the blood of Christ, but also the holy angels are drawn to him by his crowning act of giving his life for the sins of the world. That which alone can effectually restrain from sin in this world of darkness will prevent sin in heaven. The significance of the death of Christ will be seen by saints and angels. Fallen men could not have a home in the paradise of God without the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Shall we not, then, exalt the cross of Christ? The angels ascribe honor and glory to Christ, for even they are not secure except by looking to the sufferings of the Son of God. It is through the efficacy of the cross that the angels of heaven are guarded from apostasy. Without the cross, they would be no more secure against evil than were the angels before the fall of Satan. Angelic perfection failed in heaven. Human perfection failed in Eden, the paradise of bliss. All who wish for security in earth or heaven must look to the Lamb of God. The plan of salvation, making manifest the justice and love of God, provides an eternal safeguard against defection in unfallen worlds, as well as among those who shall be redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Our only hope is perfect trust in the blood of Him who can save to the utmost all that come unto God by Him. The death of Christ on the cross of Calvary is our only hope in this world, and it will be our theme in the world to come. Oh, we do not comprehend the value of the atonement. If we did, we would talk more about it. The robe of the ephod. You are to make the robe of the ephod completely blue. There is to be an opening in its top, in the center of it, with an edge all around the opening. The work of the weaver, like the opening of a collar, so that it cannot be torn. You are to make pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet, all around its hem, and bells of gold between them, all around. The pattern is to be a gold bell and a pomegranate, a gold bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe. Exodus 28, verse 31 to 34. Footnote at the bottom of page 6. Footnote number 5, Bible Training School, December 1, 1907, paragraph 4. Number 6, Sign of the Times, December 30, 1889, paragraph 4. Page number 7. This robe worn only by the high priest represents not only the true manifestation of the outward observance of the law, but also the divine authority to proclaim the law from the Spirit. The fact that the garment could not be torn demonstrates the immutability of the law and its authority. This garment cannot be torn, and therefore if it is to be removed, it must be removed entirely, not in part. The lesson is that if one wants to break one commandment, they must utterly remove from themselves the law of our heavenly family. To be more specific, the robe reveals that this antitypical high priest is endowed with the authority and duty to proclaim a solemn message sent from heaven. The robe itself pictures the divine authority of the law manifest in the righteousness of Christ displayed in his life. The pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn represent the same thing as the sash, only in the form of inviting and nutritious food, the truth of the message. The golden bells represent the proclamation of the message in purity, Zechariah 14:20, SIR, Syriac 45:6. As one hears the bells, their eyes are drawn to them, and they see the inviting truth of the sacrifice and intercession of Christ, a stone to atone for fallen humanity. The high priest is either wearing this garment or he is not. There is no halfway position and no partial wearing. This truth is the same in principle as that advocated by Victor Houteff in the following lines. As all prophetic truths are timely revealed, it is evident that there can be nothing disclosed by the wisdom of man, no matter how simple it may be. When God reveals a portion of his holy word through one of his chosen instruments, analysis of history prove that they are never erring as far as the message they deliver is concerned. It is also true that those who erred in their supposed message of truth have had no truth. So the great apostle says, "But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, yea, the deep things of God. For what man knoweth the things of a man, save the Spirit of man which is in him? Even so the things of God knoweth no man, but the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is of God, that we might know the things that are freely given to us of God." Page 8. Which things also we speak, not in the words which man's wisdom teacheth, but which the Holy Ghost teacheth, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him. Neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2, verse 10-14. Therefore, when a message is proclaimed, it is either all truth or there is no truth in it, save the quotations of the prophets. Analysis proves that truth has never come at any time by the power and wisdom of man, but by the Spirit of God through instruments of his own choice. Said Jesus, "When the Spirit of truth is come, he will guide you into all truth." If we should believe the words of the Master, then we must conclude that the rod contains either all truth or there is no truth in it, save the quotations of truth. Therefore, if we admit one truth revealed by the rod, then we must accept it all. If God has been able to guide his servants in the past into all truth, he is able now. Therefore, we take the position that the message in the rod is free from error insofar as the ideas put forth are concerned. The ephod. They are to make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen, the work of an artistic designer. It is to have 2 shoulder pieces attached to 2 of its corners so it can be joined together. The artistically woven waistband of the ephod that is on it is to be like it, of one piece with the ephod, of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen. You are to take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, and the 6 remaining names on the second stone, according to the order of their birth. You are to engrave the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel, with the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a seal. You are to have them set in gold, filigree settings. You are to put the 2 stones on the shoulders of the ephod, stones of memorial for the sons of Israel, and Aaron will bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders for a memorial. You are to make filigree settings of gold and 2 braided chains of pure gold, like a cord, and attach the chains to the settings. Exodus 28, verse 6 to 14. Footnote at the bottom of page 8. Number 7, The Shepherd's Rod, Volume 2, page 14. Number 8, The Symbolic Code, Volume 1, Number 8, page 1. Capitalization original to quotation. Page number 9. Since the blue robe, which we just considered, is called the robe of the ephod, Exodus 28:31, there must be some connection between the meaning of the robe and the ephod itself. While the robe was all blue, the ephod contained all 5 of the materials which appear in the priestly garments: blue, purple, red, linen, and gold. Also upon the ephod was placed the breastplate of judgment, which contained the Urim and Thummim. All of these aspects of the high priest's garments help to inform us of the meaning of the others. We've seen that the robe of the ephod represents the authority endowed upon the high priest to speak law, instruction from the Spirit. The ephod should represent something similar, but also have its own particular meaning. The story of David's experience with the ephod should shed some light on how he understood it, or at least its use. Now, when Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, had fled to David at Keilah, he had brought with him an ephod. When Saul was told that David had come to Keilah, Saul said, "God has delivered him into my hand, for he has boxed himself into a corner by entering a city with 2 barred gates." So Saul mustered all his army to go down to Keilah and besiege David and his men. When David realized that Saul was planning to harm him, he told Abiathar the priest, "Bring the ephod." Then David said, "O Lord God of Israel, your servant has clearly heard that Saul is planning to come to Keilah to destroy the city because of me. Will the leaders of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, please inform your servant." Then the Lord said, "He will come down." David asked, "Will the leaders of Keilah deliver me and my men into Saul's hand?" The Lord said, "They will deliver you over." 1 Samuel 23, verse 6 to 12. Apparently, David understood that the presence of the ephod would enable him to receive answers from Yahweh in relation to what was about to take place. For this reason, the ephod has been elsewhere referred to as the ephod of prophecy. It is in the gift of prophecy, then, that truth and righteousness, linen, the authority of the law, blue, the sacrifice and life of Christ, red, his atonement on our behalf, purple, and the purity of the gospel, gold, are all bound. Footnote at the page, end of page 9. See the Testament of Levi 8, verse 3. So that was bound together. Page number 10. It is the gift of prophecy endowed upon the high priest, which enables him to govern Israel as revealed by his bearing of the names of the tribes upon his shoulders. Isaiah 9:6 and 22, verse 22. The ephod means or reveals the prophetic and kingly roles of the antitypical high priest. This is further borne out by the fact that the Zedekite priesthood in Ezekiel's vision is the antitypical priesthood of righteousness. The high priest of that temple is referred to as the prince. Ezekiel 43:3, 45:7, 16, 17, 22, and chapter 46, verse 2 to 18, 48, verse 21 to 22, which is also the name given to the antitypical Davidic figure earlier in Ezekiel. Ezekiel 34, verse 24, and 37, verse 25. When speaking of the same time, in other words, the antitypical David is prophet, 2 Samuel 23, verse 1 and 2, priest, 1 Samuel 21, verse 7, 2 Samuel 6, verse 12 to 14, 1 Chronicles 15, 27, and 16:2, and king, Ezekiel 37, verse 24, thus serving as Christ's visible representative. It is important to remember that in the priestly consecration types, Moses, as the mediator of the covenant, acted as the high priest while ordaining the priesthood, including Aaron as high priest. Likewise, in the antitypical fulfillment, Christ, as the mediator of the new covenant, acts as high priest while ordaining the priesthood, including the Davidic high priest. This is also brought out in Zechariah, where Joshua the high priest is ordained to priesthood, Zechariah 3, but is also given a crown to signify his kingly role, Zechariah 6:11. In both the 3rd and 6th chapters of Zechariah, Joshua is a distinct figure from the man whose name is Branch, Christ, the Son of God. This, together with the fact that Joshua was a sinner in need of a garment change, as represented in the 3rd chapter, makes it clear that this latter-day antitypical high priest is not Christ, but is rather only a mere human saved by grace and through faith. The breastpiece with Urim and Thummim. You are to make a breastpiece for use in making decisions, the work of an artistic designer. You are to make it in the same fashion as the ephod. You are to make it of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen. It is to be square when doubled, half a cubit long and half a cubit wide. You are to set it in a setting for stones, 4 rows of stones, a row with a ruby, a topaz, and a beryl, the first row, and the second row, a turquoise, a sapphire, and emerald, and the third row, a hyacinth, an agate, and amethyst, and the fourth row, a chrysolite, an onyx, and a jasper. Footnote at the bottom of page 10. See the Silver Trumpet, Volume 1, Number 3, page 22 to 26. Number 11, C-Track, Number 8, Mount Zion at the 11th Hour, page 71. Number 12, it can be similarly shown that the antitypical Davidic king is not a member of the Godhead, but rather only a redeemed human. For an introduction to this topic, see our studies on Psalms 2. Page number 11. They are to be enclosed in gold in their filigree settings. The stones are to be for the names of the sons of Israel, 12 according to the number of their names. Each name according to the 12 tribes is to be like the engravings of a seal. Aaron will bear the names of the sons of Israel in the breastpiece of decision over his heart when he goes into the holy place, for a memorial before the Lord continually. You are to put the Urim and Thummim into the breastpiece of decision, and they are to be over Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord. Aaron is to bear the judgments of the Israelites over his heart before the Lord continually. Exodus 28, verse 15 to 21, 29, and 30. This breastpiece, like the ephod, contained all 5 materials used in the high priestly garments. Also, like the ephod, it had precious gems set upon it, with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The names being on his shoulders showed that he was to govern them, but the names over his heart showed that he was to intercede on their behalf. The primary purpose of this breastpiece, though, was that it was to be for the purpose of making decisions or judgments. It was known as the breastplate of judgment by virtue of its containing the Urim and Thummim. Though the scriptures never give us a detailed description of the Urim and Thummim, their purpose is declared plainly. And he, Joshua, will stand before Eleazar the priest, who will ask for him before the Lord by the decision of the Urim. Numbers 27, verse 21. Then Saul said, O Lord God of Israel, if this sin has been committed by me or by my son Jonathan, then, O Lord God of Israel, respond with Urim. But if this sin has been committed by your people Israel, respond with Thummim. Then Jonathan and Saul were indicated by lot, while the army was exonerated. 1 Samuel 14, verse 41. Chapter 14, verse 41. Clearly the Urim and Thummim were used as lots by which our heavenly family gave revelation concerning certain circumstances. Page 12. A comparison of 1 Samuel 28:6 in the Masoretic text and the Greek Septuagint demonstrates that this was also understood by the ancients. Masoretic text reads, So Saul inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him, not by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by the prophet. The Septuagint reads, So Saul inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him in dreams, or in the symbols of revelation, or in the prophets. The breastplate with the Urim and Thummim symbolized the theocratic governance of the nation. Since all of these garments were part of the typical Levitical system, they find the perfect fulfillment of their meaning with the latter-day antitypical priesthood. The symbol here is that the nation led by the 144,000, as symbolized by the 12 gems on the breastplate, is to be ruled by inspiration manifested through the antitypical high priestly King David coming directly from Yahweh. Thus, the children of Israel will live many days without a king or prince, and without sacrifice or altar, and without ephod or teraphim. Afterward the children of Israel will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall come with fear unto him, unto the Lord, and to his goodness in the end of the days. Hosea 3, verse 4 to 5. The turban and the plate of gold. You are to make the plate of pure gold, and engrave on it the way a seal is engraved, holiness to Yahweh. You are to attach to it a blue cord, so that it will be on the turban. It is to be on the front of the turban. Exodus 28, verse 36 and 37. The turban represents the same basic thing as the headbands which the regular priest wore, namely the pure truth, righteousness, brought into the mind of the priest. Footnote at the bottom of page 12, number 13. Teraphim was a word used for an item or items used anciently for the purpose of divination. The use of teraphim is connected with an ephod on several occasions. Judges 17:5, Judges 18:14, verses 17 to 20, and has some sort of connection with the Urim and Thummim, if only that the former is a counterfeit of the latter. Here teraphim seems to be referred to in a positive sense. The Septuagint renders the term manifestation. Page 13. One of the aspects of the mind of Christ which is especially emphasized in the turban of the high priest is revealed in Job. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment, discernment, was like a robe and a turban. Job 29:14. Upon the front of the high priestly turban was placed a plate of pure gold, which had an engraving, literally the engraving of a seal, which read, Holiness to Yahweh. This plate thus represents the seal of God, the name of our heavenly family, in the forehead, Revelation 14:1. It is the truth accepted by the individual, not only intellectually, but also spiritually. Last Day Events, page 219, paragraph 4. Holiness to Yahweh encompasses the seal in all of its aspects and is truly the present truth. On the subject, Ellen White taught that the Sabbath truth is the seal of God. Victor Houteff showed that it is also included sighing and crying and accepting the truth of the kingdom. Ben Roden was shown that the seal of the 144,000 is composed of 3 parts, according to Revelation 3:12 and Early Writings, page 15. These 3 parts are 1. God, the Sabbath truth brought by Ellen White. 2. The New Jerusalem, the kingdom truth brought by Victor Houteff. And 3. Jesus' new name, branch, brought by Ben Roden. Later, the hidden manner of the begotten daughter of God was revealed to Lois Roden, making up the glorious star of the seal. The next branch messenger, Doug Mitchell, had revealed to him the truth that the 4 above messages are represented by the 4 angels holding the 4 winds in the 7th chapter of Revelation, and that they all take part in the work of sealing as revealed by the proclamation of the angel from the east to hurt not till we have sealed the servants of our God. That angel started off in the east, the place of idolatry, the place of death in trespasses and sins. If one accepts the message of this angel, they will see their true condition and will have learned how to truly sigh and cry, not in theory but in reality, and thus be prepared to receive the seal. In this present message, we have seen the angel ascend from the east like the rising of the sun. This angel has the seal in his hand message and is ready to set it upon the willing hearts of the penitent. We have learned that up till now, the settling into the truth has only been intellectual, and that if one is to receive the seal, then that settling must be a real thing, free from idolatry, free from sin. It must be live. spiritual. This seal is bound up in the message of justification by faith in Christ from the Spirit through the dual work of intercession. She says, "Set me as a seal on your heart, as a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, passion is as fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, and it is a blazing flame." Song of Solomon 8, verse 6. Footnote at the bottom of page 13, footnote number 14, see the four horns of the altar of the sanctuary. Page 14, the seal encompasses the whole truth brought into the minds and lives of those who receive it. It stands for everything our heavenly family stands for, and thus it bears their name, Yahweh. He is who He is. The truth is the truth. Let it be what it will be. This seal shows that everything the seal bearer does and says and is pure truth. To receive it is to receive the moral image of a heavenly family restored in your mind. Holiness to Yahweh is the ever constant theme of the mind. Praise their holy name. A Goodly Land by Teresa Wilde. Greetings to all present truth believers. We have wonderful news of our heavenly family's love and willingness to provide for the work of the gospel. Here is an overview of the events that have transpired over the past several weeks. Prior to leaving British Columbia to move to Ontario, we were faced with needing to be able to move all the branch association's belongings, as well as our own. We knew the most cost-effective thing to do was to sell our car and get a vehicle that would haul a heavy trailer rather than rent a truck. Neither of us knew much about vehicles, but we began asking around and looking online for what used vehicles were available. One of the ads we came across was from an individual who was selling a 2004 GMC Yukon SLT 4x4. A week or more went by while Trent and I were just too busy with daily responsibilities to consider much on the vehicle question. Then just over a week before we were supposed to leave, our heavenly family showed us what we were supposed to do. It was morning, and as I awoke, I turned to Trent and said, "I had a dream that we bought the Yukon without even test driving it." Page 15. He leaned up and looked at me with a smile and said, "I had a dream last night that we bought the Yukon as well." We felt reassured that so long as we kept up with our daily duties, our heavenly family would provide everything we needed when we needed it. Later that same day, we purchased the Yukon and were then able to consider looking for a cargo trailer. Yet again, our heavenly family provided what was needed, and we obtained a used 7x16 tandem axle cargo trailer, which also had a new brakes and new tires. It was road ready and safe for travel. On Monday, September 15th, 2014, Trent and I left Abbotsford, British Columbia, on our way to head for Ontario. We knew we were being led to the area to find a piece of property from which the work of the gospel could be headed up and organized. Once we were in Ontario, we began looking at properties. We first considered a property that was 10 acres, but it just didn't seem like the right one. Next, we walked through a property that was around 20 acres. It was too swampy. Next, we examined a 50-acre property and thought this was much more promising. And as we prayed, we asked our Heavenly Family to show us what to do. We asked that if any property that we were considering was not the right one, that it would be taken out of the equation. A few days later, we received notice that the 50-acre lot was no longer for sale. Our gods are so good. The next property we looked at was 100 acres. This was much larger than we had originally considered as a possibility to obtain, but each time a door was closed to a piece of land, the next door opened to a larger acreage. As we continued to investigate this property and look at others, it became evident that it would be much better to be able to do all this driving without having to haul the trailer. We had rented a campsite for 2 days where we were able to leave the trailer, and it provided a lot of freedom and reduction in the cost of fuel. Pulling the trailer, the traveling was tedious and fuel was costly as we were hauling a very heavy load. So we began to consider putting it in storage in order to have more freedom in our search for land. We also knew that we needed to be working while we were looking for land, and we had nowhere to do that. So we started to consider renting a dwelling for a month or so. As we looked online for short-term rentals, we found very few that would work for us, and at one point, we came across something that was nearer to Toronto. I looked at Trent and said, if we're considering renting someplace that near to Toronto, we should just rent from Alice. Alice is a friend who has been attending the feasts we've held in Toronto, in Ontario, the past year, and had told us that if we ever needed a place to stay, her home was our home. When we called her to ask about this, she immediately said that it was an answer to prayer. We also felt that this was where our Heavenly Family was directing us, as we would be able to have more time to study with her one-on-one. She is progressing in her understanding of present truth and hungry to learn more. Page 16. On Wednesday, October 1st, 2014, we arrived at Alice's home. We stored our cargo trailer in a storage unit in Ajax, where she lives, but it could only be stored until November the 1st, since that would be when snow could most likely start to fall, and the snow plows would need to be able to drive through where the storage businesses allowed things like the trailer to be stored. The normal price for a month of storage was over $300, but their introductory special was a savings of 99%. So with taxes and fees, the total for storing the trailer for a month was only about $30. We had no idea where we would store the trailer after that date, but we knew our Heavenly Family would provide either a property by that time or another place to store it. Even the way we obtained such a low cost of storage was quite miraculous. Here is a bit more detail on how the storage thing worked. There are 2 types of storage in this place. 1, in a storage unit, and 2, parking outside. They said the trailer would fit in their storage unit. However, once we pulled around to park the trailer, we found that there was absolutely no way it would fit. So there we were, we couldn't fit the trailer into the storage unit, and they said they didn't have more places to park. We were going to have to get a refund and find some other place. They then realized that they did have a parking spot, but that we would have to be out by November 1st due to the snow, etc. The discount only applies to the storage units, but since we were already in the computer with the discount, the computer would not allow the discount to be removed. They ended up just giving us the parking spot at the discounted rate. The $30 was the price of the initial sign-up, a padlock, and the first month's fee. Page 17. While at Alice's place, we started to seriously consider the 100-acre property and began inquiring into building codes and zoning, etc. What we learned showed us that this was not the right property, either on the entire 100 acres. We would only be allowed to build one dwelling house. This just wouldn't work for the purposes of our Heavenly Families ministry. This seemed like a large obstacle, though, because anywhere that there was a municipality, we were told we would run into the same building codes and zoning laws. We trusted that our Heavenly Family would make their will known to us as we needed to know it. At this time, we came across the idea of unorganized townships. An unorganized township is a place where there are no zoning laws, and the closest form of government to the township is the provincial government. We knew that if we were to obtain a property in one of these townships, it would provide the freedom necessary to do the work of our Heavenly Family. On Tuesday, October 14, 2014, during the Feast of Tabernacles, we left Ajax to travel north to look at a couple properties that were for sale. They were both 151-acre lots, and they were also both in unorganized townships. We had thought we might only be gone 3 days, as those were the only properties that we were aware of that were of any consideration for our Heavenly Family's headquarters. But it soon became apparent that these properties were only a means of bringing us to the general area where we would need to be looking for the right property. The 151-acre lot, the lots were just too swampy. For almost 2 weeks, we remained in the area of North Bay, where we drove through unorganized townships, road by road, and searched for land. We knew we could not sit idly by and expect our Heavenly Family to simply drop something into our laps with no effort on our part. We stopped and spoke to people who lived in the area and inquired about land for sale, but we didn't find anything in that area that was for sale other than small parcels of land with houses which were not conducive to the needs of the ministry and way beyond the current budget. Day by day, we would pray and ask our Heavenly Family for their guidance and to be sustained by their love. We were open to the possibility that we would not find property until after winter, but we couldn't quite envision how that would work since we had all the branch belongings in the cargo trailer that really should be kept out of the humidity to preserve the documents, etc. We just knew that whatever happened, our Heavenly Family would work out the details in the best way for their purposes. Page 18. During our stay in North Bay, We also had a few witnessing opportunities. While we were there, we spent a lot of time in a lounge at an SO truck stop to charge the computer and write for the Silver Trumpet. One of the employees there was working a lot while we were around, and we got to know him a little. Before we left the area to head back to Ajax, we left a copy of the Lost Gospel of Christ for him. His name is Mike, and we would appreciate if you would all remember him in prayer. There was also a local lady who spent her work breaks in the lounge. She worked nearby and was in the habit of hanging out in the SO lounge. We started talking one evening and had a lovely conversation in which I was able to share the gospel of justification by faith. During our conversation, she suddenly asked, "So are you Jehovah's Witnesses or Baptists?" I hadn't expected that, but I smiled and said, "Actually neither, but I do read my Bible." And so we continued talking, and I could see the Spirit moving upon her heart. We didn't exchange names, but please pray for her as well. There were two other individuals to whom we had occasion to witness. One evening I went to the laundromat while Trent was writing in the food court at the mall. While he was there, a lady stopped to ask what he was doing, and they ended up discussing the gospel. Meanwhile, I had gone to wash clothes at the laundromat, and a guy there doing his laundry was talking to a lady who worked there. She brought me into the conversation, and as I talked to him, I learned that he kept the Sabbath. I was able to share a good deal about the gospel and gave him a copy of the Lost Gospel of Christ. We can definitely see that the harvest is ripe and people are ready to hear the good news. Pray for the work. Please pray. There are so many people eager to know the peace and love of the gospel. Psalms 4 verse 6. As we continue driving and looking for land, we also called a few realtors in the area and had them looking for us. We told them exactly what our budget was and what our needs would be in the way of type and size of land. We had originally thought we wouldn't be able to afford anything much larger than 10 or 20 acres. But the more we thought about it and prayed about it, we could see how necessary it would be to have a large space in which to have a grade school as well as a ministerial school and a wellness center and a home for the aged. We would need enough land to grow our own food and have enough to sustain multiple families if need be. The larger acreage were definitely seeming like the thing that was needed. Page 19. After we determined that the 151-acre properties would not work due to being too wet, we called the realtor who had those listings and told him exactly what we needed. We told him that we needed nothing less than 50 acres and larger would be better. We mentioned that the price would need to be below $40,000 unless owner financing was an option, and we told him the land needed to be dry. He promised to find us something, even if it took him a couple of weeks. So, in the meantime, we continued to search. We drove through miles and miles of countryside, but did not find anything promising. However, at one point something came to our attention that looked pretty good. In talking to people in the area, we were directed to a man who owned a logging company. We found where he lived and drove there to inquire if he knew of any land for sale. He said he did and gave us the number for the owner. Each property was 160 acres, and at least one of them was in an unorganized township. This sounded promising. We were contemplating how wonderful it was that each time our Heavenly Family brought a piece of land to our attention for consideration, it was always a larger and better acreage than the one before. We phoned the landowner, but he had decided not to sell the properties, and so the door was closed. What could this mean? Did it mean that our Heavenly Family was actually going to put us on the property even larger than that? Later, that same day, Friday, October 24th, 2014, we were online looking for anything new that may have been posted since last we had looked. As we were perusing the listings, we saw an ad for an acreage that was 288.96 acres. At first, we didn't realize it was a new listing, but we went ahead and opened it anyway just to be certain. When we clicked the ad, it took us to another website which happened to belong to the realtor who had the two 151-acre properties and had told us he would find us something to suit our needs. At the top of the listing, it said new, so we knew we had not seen this before. We continued reading through the ad and could barely believe our eyes. It was listed for only $60,000, and the seller would finance so long as the buyer could put down 30 to 40%. The land had surface rights, mineral rights, and tree rights, as well as being in an unorganized township. It literally had every feature we needed, so long as the land was dry enough. We called the realtor right away and learned that he had just, page 20, he had just listed it the night before and was going to call us but didn't have our number with him due to traveling. Praise our Heavenly Family for guiding us to look and to call the realtor rather than simply waiting to hear from him. Once we got his permission to go to the property, we left as soon as we could. Once we were on the property, we knew quickly that this was the right one. But rather than feeling elated and excited, we each had a sense of peacefulness. We had an assurance that our Heavenly Family had directed us the entire way and that they would continue to bless this work and see it through to the end. The property has a variety of terrain. There are cleared areas as well as woods. There are creeks as well as a few small ponds. One section has an area where the undergrowth is full of beautiful moss. We later learned from Carol and Norman that Canadian moss is desirable, and when we mentioned this to Michael, he confirmed that it will be of much use in agriculture. There are also a variety of different soils which will be able to be used for farming as well as building cob houses. Here is an aerial shot of the property. Page 21. We called the realtor that evening and let him know it was the right property. Then we emailed an offer to him so he could officially write it up. The next morning, he emailed us the purchase agreement, and we found a print shop, where we printed it out, then read it through carefully before signing, and once we finished, we emailed it back to him. A few hours later, we had the purchase agreement returned to us with the signature of the seller. It was a done deal. The next thing was to send a cashier's check for the deposit of $2,000, which we did the following day. We will close on the deal no later than November 14, at which time we will pay the remaining down payment of $18,000. After this, we will own the title and take possession of the property. The monthly payments will be less than $380, and we can pay off the balance at any time with no penalties. Praise our Heavenly Family. We were able to obtain a 289-acre property with no 9-to-5 jobs, with pay stubs. Most people would simply not believe it. Is there anything too hard for Yahweh? So long as we are walking in their will for our lives, they will provide for our needs. I am reminded of the scripture which reads, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which is today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Page 22. Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that ye have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow, for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Matthew 6:19-34. A goodly dwelling. Once we knew we had found the right property, we began looking online for yurts. Yet again, our heavenly family has shown that they have taken care of all the details. We found a yurt that a woman has lived in for the past 2 years with her baby in Barry Bay, Ontario, and able to stay plenty warm, even in minus 45 degrees Celsius. It cost her nearly $20,000, and she told us without our asking that she is motivated to sell and will take $11,000, even though her ad was asking $14,000. It comes complete with a Vermont Castings wood stove, as well as a wind and snow kit for the yurt. All we have to do is move it to the property and set it up. The diameter of the yurt is 20 feet and will be large enough for all our belongings as well as the branch association's belongings. The documents will be kept safe and dry through the winter, and we will have a place to live and work. Page 23. Our next need was to find a place to store the trailer after November 1st, until we could take possession of the land and set up the yurt. Alice had mentioned a couple of weeks before prior that she knows some Adventists who live in the country with plenty of space to store the trailer should we need a place for it. So we asked her to call and see if we could park it there, and they said that we could. The other nice thing is that their home is located right on the way to go pick up the yurt. Again, our Heavenly Family has taken care of the details. We hope that each of you will be encouraged by what our Divine Family is preparing for the finishing up of the Gospel. And if you are able, go back and listen to the study given on Isaiah 6, held June 30th, 2014. It is our prayer that when Yahweh asks in Isaiah 6:8, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" that everyone now reading this will be able to cheerfully say, "Here am I, send me." Questions and answers. Is there a difference between a messenger and a prophet? Question number 8. Is there a difference between a messenger and a prophet? If so, how does one prove which is which? Answer. Since the words messenger and prophet mean different things to different people and are used differently in different contexts, it is not as simple as we would perhaps like to answer this excellent question. In order to do so, however, we will examine the question in 3 different contexts. First, that of the Old Testament scriptures. Second, that of the New Testament scriptures. And third, that of the writings of Ellen White. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible uses one main word for prophet, that is, Navi. The word itself carries the meaning of spokesperson. All the uses of this word in the scriptures are in clear harmony with this meaning. For example, page 24. So the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron will be your prophet. You are to speak everything I command you, and your brother Aaron is to tell Pharaoh that he must release the Israelites from his land." Exodus 7, verse 1 and 2. So you are to speak to him and put words in his mouth. And as for me, I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you both what you must do. He will speak to you, or speak for you, to the people, and it will be as if he were your mouth, and as if you were his God. Exodus 4, verse 15 and 16. The word malak is the common Hebrew word employed for messenger. It literally means messenger and is used throughout the Hebrew Bible with that meaning. Both carry the same basic meaning, in that one who is a prophet or a messenger is standing in place of another, or speaking or acting on behalf of others. The primary difference is that Navi is used exclusively in a religious sense, as in a spokesperson for a god, whereas Malak is used more broadly, encompassing anyone acting as a messenger for anyone else. In the Hebrew Bible, every prophet is a messenger, but not every messenger is a prophet. In the New Testament, the word for prophet is prophetes, and means the same thing as the word Navi in the Hebrew Bible. The word anglos is the common word for messenger and means the same as malak. There is another word that is used in the New Testament which literally means messengers or sent ones. This word is apostolos, which is where we get the word apostle. The use of this word in the New Testament is somewhat innovative, as there isn't much evidence of similar use prior to it. The only known occurrence of the word in the Septuagint is in 1 Kings 14:6, where Ahijah, the prophet, 1 Kings 14:2 says, I am an apostle to bear to you the hard message. Footnotes at the end of page 24. For example, see Genesis 32:3 and 6, Joshua 7:22, 1 Kings 19:2, 1 Chronicles 14:1. Footnote number 16. See 2 Chronicles 36:15 and 16, Isaiah 44:26, Haggai 1 verse 1 with 1 verse 13, and Malachi 3:1 with Malachi 4:5. Footnote number 17. The abbreviation for the Greek Septuagint, an important translation of the Hebrew Scriptures prior to the Common Era. The particular text in consideration here is Codex Andreacus. Page 25. What is interesting about this passage is the Hebrew word there, translated apostle, is actually a verb which means commissioned, leaving the phrase to be literally translated, I have been commissioned to bear to you a hard message. The meaning of apostolos in both this passage and the New Testament carries a sense of mission beyond that which is conveyed by the more common words for messenger. While the New Testament applies many of the same characteristics to apostles as it does to prophets, it also clearly distinguishes them. Certain prophecies or prophets in the New Testament only played very minor roles, such as Agabus and of Judea, Acts 21 verse 10, and Philip's daughters, Acts 21 verse 9. The apostles, though, were called to work intimately close with Christ himself, Matthew 10 verse 2, in preparation to bear a message of present truth to Israel first, and then the Gentiles also. It is clear that the apostles were the leaders of the early church, and that they led it by inspiration. A study of the footnotes, along with the rest of the occurrences of apostolos in the New Testament, will reveal that an apostle messenger is one who is very specifically called to accomplish a certain mission, which includes bearing a message of present truth given to the apostle directly from our heavenly family, as well as taking up the work in any line which the Spirit indicates. To summarize, in the New Testament, the relationship between the common words for prophet and messenger are the same as in the Hebrew Bible. That said, the other word for messenger, apostolos, comprehends more than either of the common words, or even both combined. To be an apostle messenger does not simply mean to speak on behalf of a heavenly family on an isolated occasion, or even to receive dreams or visions from time to time. It means to be commissioned as a leader to bear a directly inspired heaven-sent message with a definite mission to be accomplished. Footnote at the bottom of page 25. Number 18, for example, prophets are inspired by the Spirit, Numbers 11:29, 2 Peter 1:21, as are apostles, Acts 1:2, Ephesians 3:5. Also, prophets may enact signs and or wonders, Deuteronomy 3:1, as may apostles, Acts 5:12. Footnote number 19, see Luke 11:49, Ephesians 2:20, 3:5, and especially 4:11. Footnote number 20, see Acts 4:35, 37, 5:2, and chapter 6, verse 6, 8, verse 18, 1 Corinthians 12:28, Revelation 21:14. Footnote number 21. This is evident from not only the fact that apostles are said to receive their message and doctrine from the Spirit in the same way as prophets. See FN 18. But also from the history left us in the book of Acts, wherein we find that the Spirit was the one leading the apostles in the forwarding of the gospel, Acts 8:29, 10:19, 11:12, 13 verse 2, and 15 verse 28. Paul, in defending his apostleship, took pains to demonstrate that he received his message directly from the Christ, he and she, as opposed to learning it from uninspired men, or even from the other apostles. See Galatians 1 and 2. Page 26. In the writings of Ellen White, as with the other sections, we will not be writing an exhaustive survey of the use of the terms prophet and messenger in Ellen White's writings. We will, though, consider some example occurrences in order to understand the different ways in which these terms can be used. Let us consider a few statements. I am now instructed that I am not to be hindered in my work by those who engage in suspicions regarding its nature, whose minds are struggling with so many intricate problems connected with the supposed work of a prophet. My commission embraces the work of a prophet, but it does not end there. It embraces much more than the minds of those who have been sowing the seeds of unbelief can comprehend. Letter 244, 1906. My work includes much more than this name, prophet, signifies. I regard myself as a messenger entrusted by the Lord with messages for his people. Letter 55, 1905. To claim to be a prophetess is something that I have never done. If others call me by that name, I have no controversy with them. But my work has covered so many lines that I cannot call myself other than a messenger, sent to bear a message from the Lord to his people and to take up work in any line that he points out. Footnote at the bottom of page 26. Number 23. This is not to say that apostles could not receive dreams and visions, as some have. It should also be mentioned that receiving dreams and visions does not necessarily qualify one as a prophet either. See Deuteronomy 13, verse 1, 3, and 5. Dreamers of dreams, prophets, and apostles may all receive dreams and visions, with each maintaining their separate roles. It could be viewed as a tier system in which the dreamer may dream without being given a prophetic oracle. and thus is not a prophet or apostle. A prophet must receive the word of Yahweh and a responsibility to share it with others through direct inspiration, and may also dream and have visions within that calling. To be an apostle, one must be commissioned to lead and bear an inspired message, though they may also be a prophet and a dreamer. Footnote number 24, Selected Messages, Volume 1, page 36, paragraph 2. Number 25, Selected Messages, Volume 1, page 36, paragraph 1. And 26, Selected Messages, Volume 1, page 34, paragraph 5. Page number 27. From the above lines, it is evident that Ellen White was here using the term messenger in the sense of apostle messenger, as discussed above. There are many examples throughout her writings, though, where she uses the term in the more generic sense. So, is there a difference between a messenger and a prophet? In some contexts, yes, and in some contexts, no. Distinguishing and proving when there is a difference and what the difference is determined by the text. We hope that this brief review of some of the occurrences of these terms in their different contexts will help the questioner and our other readers to grasp the matter with more clarity, and that it will aid in further study of the subject. Where to pay tithe? Question number 9. We have recently received inquiry from more than one as to whether believers in present truth should pay tithe to the branch association or to the General Conference of SDAs. Answer: reading the Symbolic Code, Volume 1, Number 14, page 9 and 10, will provide a clear answer to this question. If there are any remaining questions, please do not hesitate to ask. What does it mean to pray without ceasing? Question number 10. Since you teach that our prayers are to be spoken out loud, what do you make of 1 Thessalonians 5:17, which says, pray without ceasing? Answer: as with all seeming contradictions, what we must do is to examine the meaning of each passage under the light of inspiration to discover the intended meaning of the statement by the author. Footnote at the end of page 27 is number 27. For example, see the Ellen White 1888 materials, page 1455, paragraph 2, where she refers to Jones, Prescott, Wagner, and Olson as messengers. That she did not mean this in the same sense in which she referred to herself as a messenger can be seen by reading the various rebukes which she wrote to and concerning these individuals. Likewise, she refers to Luther as a messenger. Review and Herald, February 12, 1880, paragraph 10, or point 10. While at the same time holding that the spirit of prophecy was quiescent during the Dark Ages. See our study, What is the Spirit of Prophecy? Page 28. First, though, we will take a little time to more clearly understand the issue at hand. The discrepancy is found in the fact that the scriptures abound with references to audible prayer, while containing no clear reference to merely mental prayer. But at the same time, the whole Christian world, as well as the larger religious demographic, performs mental prayer as their regular and dominant practice. Due to the latter aspect of the situation, the scriptures have been read in light of mental prayer, and certain texts, such as the one under consideration, have long been interpreted as referring to and promoting the practice. Viewed in the light of the mental prayer, the words without ceasing have been understood to mean all the time without break in the very literal sense. Because of this, and since it is unreasonable to think that Paul could be instructing the Thessalonians to be audibly talking to God 24/7, people have assumed that he must be there speaking of silent mental prayer. We want to ask all our readers to examine 1 Thessalonians 5 and see if there is anywhere in that text which mentions silent or mental prayer. The seeker for truth will have to admit that there is nothing in the passage which says anything about mental prayer, and that it is only an assertion of the thought into the text which has caused people to interpret it as such. In other words, there is nothing in the passage which at all tells us that Paul is speaking of mental prayer. With this in view, we can see that the discrepancy is not between the teachings of Paul and that of the branch, but it is rather between the teachings of our heavenly family and the traditional views of religion which Christianity has adopted. Now let us examine the phrase, pray without ceasing, in its own context according to the Spirit of truth. The first context to consider is that of the phrase itself and the meaning of the words therein. The word pray, even though it has come to carry the meaning of a religious act someone engages in, is simply an Old English word for ask. Likewise, the Greek word, here translated pray, is proseumakai, and it simply means ask. So rather than the text giving the instruction to be constantly engaged in a religious or spiritual activity now referred to as prayer, it is simply saying to constantly ask. Footnote at the bottom of page 28. Number 28, see Psalms 4, 1, 5, 1 to 3, 54, verse 2, 55, 17, among many others. Footnote number 29, online etymological dictionary, art, or pray. Okay. Page 29. Are we to be continuously, without interruption, asking things of God 24/7? It doesn't quite make sense, does it? Even in a silent prayer context. There are two other times within the same letter that Paul uses the word for without ceasing. We give thanks to God always, for all of you, and without ceasing, making mention of you in our prayers. 1 Thessalonians 1:2. For this reason, we too thank God without ceasing, that when you received God's message that you heard from us, you accept it not as the word of man, but as it is in truth, the word of God, which is at work among you who believe. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 13. Two other passages from Paul's letters will help us to understand his meaning. For this reason, we also, from the day we heard about you, have not ceased praying for you, asking God to fill you with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. Colossians 1, verse 9. For God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I make mention of you always in my prayers. Romans 1, verse 9. The clear meaning of both passages is that Paul, when requesting things of God, would always mention those to whom he was writing. It is saying that he wouldn't forget them in his prayers. To pray without ceasing, then, means to not forget to pray, to neglect praying or asking. It is to continue to intercede in the behalf of others, since there is no reason why fulfilling this would have to be done by means of mental prayer, and because it can indeed be done by audible prayer, we conclude that there is no conflict between this passage and the scriptural admonition to pray audibly found throughout the rest of Sacred Writ. Another aspect of the context of 1 Thessalonians 5:17 is the historical context. It is unfortunate that more research is not readily available to the public concerning the history of silent prayer. But what is available is quite telling. Page 30. The ancients said their prayers out loud. There can be little doubt that throughout the ancient world the common practice was to say prayers in a way audible to other persons. The reason simply was that the anthropomorphic conception of the deities one prayed to implied that the gods had ears that worked in much the same way that human ears did. No sound implied no hearing. In antiquity, prayers were said out loud, and silent prayer was regarded as an anomalous practice that was looked upon with great suspicion. It was brought into connection with a variety of base motives, which it was feared would be strongly objected to by others, foremost among which are wishes to practice magic, to have illicit sex, or to conceal crimes or criminal plans. It was also feared that one's prayer might be counteracted or undone by more powerful prayers of the opponents. It is only in circles of later Neo-Platoism, in the framework of the increasing transcendentalization in its concept of deity and the corresponding downgrading of anything material or corporeal, that complete silence as the purest form of worship was gradually accepted. Since mental prayer was still not viewed in a positive light among the more faithful Jews in the first century, it is unlikely that Paul would write in its favor. Moreover, since the idea of merely mental prayer came from the immaterialistic worldview promoted by Plato and other pagan philosophers, and since Paul was decidedly opposed to these transcendental views, especially coming from proto-Gnostics and other mystical groups which claim Jesus as their Messiah, we can know with certainty that he would not risk giving any intimation of compromise on the truths of materialism and corporeal reality to which he so firmly held. Footnotes at the bottom of page 30, number 30, Silent Prayer in Antiquity, page 1, by Peter W. van der Horst, published in Novum, volume 41, 1994. Novum is the International Review for the History of Religions. 31, Silent Prayer in Antiquity, page 1, by Peter W. van der Horst. 32, the study of 1 Corinthians 15 should be enough to convince the candid mind of Paul's materialistic and corporealistic views. Page 31, a personal testimony. A marriage restored. For years, Michael and I have had a very unstable marriage life. We were one of those couples who never got to know each other first, and in a very short time already had our first child. However, I cannot account the unhappy marriage all to that reason. I know some couples with the same background still manage to have a decent, happy marriage. By the grace of our Heavenly Family, we were able to raise 6 children amidst all the turmoil in our lives. When the Brandt's message came to our lives, the justification by faith, truth hit hard at the root of the matter. A search of the heart began, and it must have been deep, although at the time I didn't realize the extent of it. Giving up self and being born again was the message of the hour. What did all this mean? Our relationship was on the downward spiral. Michael knew it, and I knew it. Communication was at a low level, and if there was any at all, it was tumultuous. That seemed to be the only way we knew how to communicate. It had become habitual that we just lived like that, almost thinking it was normal. And I pity our children now for such a wrong example we exemplified. It came to a point that neither of us were willing to give up our own opinions of each other. I remember one early dawn, Michael woke me up to tell me a dream he just had. He was at home struggling while up on a ladder and was calling for help. I was not making myself available to help him, and all of a sudden 2 women came through the door and rushed past me and went straight to Michael's aid. Michael admitted that our Heavenly Family interpreted that dream to him instantly, and it was told to him that he had to start relying on our Heavenly Mother and Sister in times of need. To Michael, his focus on the dream was how I was not making myself available to him, and this he related to our relationship. That topic soon became a bone of contention, and I argued how his focus should be on the interpretation given him, and not to make me center of attention in the dream. This irritated me immensely, and I could not calm my mind to think I was the focus of his dream. After that incident, during my closet prayers and heart-searching moments, page 32, I started to ask our Heavenly Family to change my heart in my attitude if there was anything there to change. I told them that I felt quite confident that it was no fault of mine that Michael is constantly so needy and sensitive. But if there was something there that I could see for myself, I'm allowing them to do something about it according to their will. Eventually, I was able to admit that I could be more sympathetic at times to my husband. I decided from then on that our Heavenly Family had to be the potters while I was the clay. I really started to want them to mold me and make me according to their will. Even after all that, our marriage was still decaying day by day. Something had to be done soon. It was getting unbearable. The summer was full of family weddings and get-togethers. Our oldest daughter, Santiana, was getting married. In my private thoughts, I had to just stay patient and wait for all these family festivities to end, and then I would sit down with Michael to come to a mutual agreement about separation for now. I refused to live like this any longer, and as scary the thought was in my head, I felt very strongly about separating. I needed a drastic change. Everybody needed it. We had grown apart more and more each day. Michael engrossed himself with the greenhouse business, and I was just as busy. 5 days after the wedding of our daughter, September 12, 2014, was the day our marriage hit rock bottom. The climax had reached its height. and I was ready to throw it all out the door. Michael was very aware and frustrated, just the same, and accepted what was to come. We knew it was the end, but lo and behold, a new attitude had entered me that late evening. Our heavenly family decided that it was now time, according to my choice, that their work they had already begun was going to be manifest to me. Our sister transplanted a new heart for me, allowing me to suddenly have this unconditional love for my husband. Strangely to me, I started to look at him differently. All the negative attributes that were deeply embedded in my mind about him disappeared. I started to appreciate him more. I started to long for him. At some instances, Sister Wisdom allowed my thoughts to reminisce to specific situations in our marriage where Michael was crying out to me for comfort and help. A feeling of sorrow, remorse, and sympathy just penetrated through me, unlike in the past. A feeling of disdain was all I felt. Page 33. Scene after scene were brought before me of all those times I did not stand by him as a loving wife. And each time this happened, I had to confess and ask Michael for forgiveness for each instance. He seemed to be quite aware of those same specific instances. Nonetheless, I was dumbfounded to the change in me. I could not explain the mystery of the transformation. At times, I would wonder if this was just a temporary thing. I was dreaming, and soon things will get back to normal of our unhappy marriage. Surprisingly, all has changed. Not a drop of negative feelings or thought was able to return. My love for my husband has been miraculously restored in its proper place. This has been such an amazing and awesome transformation in my life. There was nothing of my own ways that could have resulted in this. I know this for the fact that I have tried in the past over and over to make things right, and to no avail. I can honestly testify that a change has been wrought in me by our loving Heavenly Family. I can only testify that I surrendered and sincerely, contritely, and desperately allowed them to be the potters and I be the clay. To mold me and to make me is what I prayed continuously, because I knew that they had my life and marriage in their ultimate best interest. How can I express my gratitude and appreciation in this boundless act of love they so freely gave? With humbleness and meekness of heart, I thank our Heavenly Family for this miracle. Annalisa Allen, British Columbia, Canada. Health Tips by Teresa Wilde. For those interested in finding ways to incorporate more raw vegetables into their diet, but find it difficult to get excited about eating them, we provide these simple dip recipes. Both are also a good source of beneficial probiotics for the digestive system. Measurements are approximate and may be modified to individual taste. Page 34. Tahini dip. 1 cup tahini, blended sesame seeds. 1 tablespoon organic miso, naturally fermented soybeans and rice for easy digestion. Organic to ensure non-GMO. 1 tablespoon salt, or teaspoon of salt. Celtic, pink, Himalayan or Redmond's real salt, or any other truly unprocessed salt. 2 tablespoons nutritional yeast flakes or powder. Mix all ingredients thoroughly and enjoy with raw carrots, jicama, zucchini, cauliflower, kale, parsnips, or any other raw veggie of your choice. Just some of the nutrients contained in tahini are protein, calcium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, and B vitamins. The miso contains probiotics. Organic dilly yogurt dip. 1 cup organic plain yogurt. Greek style works best, but not essential. 1 teaspoon salt, Celtic pink Himalayan, or Redmond's real salt, or any other truly unprocessed salt. 2 teaspoons dill weed, fresh or dry. If using fresh, be sure to mince well. 1/2 teaspoon celery salt, 1/2 teaspoon onion powder, or 1 tablespoon dried onion flakes, 1/2 teaspoon garlic powder, 1 tablespoon nutritional yeast flakes. Mix well and, for best flavor, allow to sit for an hour or more. This is especially tasty on raw broccoli and raw bell peppers. It also makes a delicious substitute for ranch dressing on salads, diced cucumber, or baked potatoes. Some of the nutrients found in yogurt include B12, calcium, B6, magnesium, and of course probiotics. Page 35. Our weekly and festival meetings will, at least for now, no longer be held on WebEx, but rather will be hosted using a service known as Free Conference Call. Here are the call-in numbers: Australia, crossed out; Canada, crossed out; Kenya, crossed out; United States, crossed out. The access code for all countries is crossed out. The times for the meetings this weekend will be Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Note, when using WebEx and weekly meeting invitations, listed and starting time according to the Pacific time zone, from now on, we will be listing the meetings times according to the Eastern Standard Time zone. In order to avoid unnecessary background noises, which can be difficult to edit out of the recordings, we request that all participants keep themselves on mute except when speaking. You can mute or unmute yourself by hitting *6. Also, if at any point during the meeting you receive another call on the same phone, please end the meeting. Call and then call back when you have finished the other conversation. When a participant has the meeting on hold, there is a beep which occurs every few seconds, which would disturb the meeting and dramatically reduce the quality of the recording. 2. With each issue of the Silver Trumpet, we hope to include contributions from those investigating and examining the present truth. These contributions may be testimonies of how the message has impacted you, reports of how the work is going in your area, or stories of trials you have undergone on account of the message. It could be health tips, recipes, poems, articles, etc. Whatever it may be, please send it in, that it may be published and thus serve as an encouragement for others. Footnote at the bottom of page 35, footnote number 33, see the most recent issue of the Silver Trumpet for the updated information. Page 36. For the convenience of our readers, number 3, here are a number of references to some of those the days of the 8th scripture month, which are found in the ancient Hebrew writings. Month, no day specified: 1 Kings 6:38, 1 Chronicles 27:11, Zechariah 1:1. 11th day, November 5th, Jubilee 32 verse 33. 12th day, November 6th, Jubilee 28:20. 15th day, November 9. 1 Kings 12:32-33. 21st day, November 15th, 2nd Barnabas 77 verse 18. The garment of praise. The garment of praise in exchange for rags. You see filthiness stains all pride-filled flags. A turban for ashes and joy for mourning. You can be clothed with sashes by heeding the warning. The lies of the accuser are all the same. Cast off deception and let the truth reign. The priesthood of righteousness, or the beasthood of sin. Let the angel of Yahweh form their image within. Love is here by restoration, liberation for the captives. See, victory for all in every temptation. It is here for you in Ezekiel's tree. Present truth, you're called to receive. Surely you will if you wholly believe. Your leggings and tunics are needled and done. Your sashes and headbands are skillfully spun. The song in the ear, the words of the seer, they are nigh thee, right by thee, before and behind thee. Claim the promise and don't let go. Let the call and election work its deathly blow. With the old garment gone, there will be a new dawn. You will fly as the dove and leap as the fawn. You will be trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, ministers and priests to all the abhorred. Let Ezekiel fail and sin end its days. Accept now from wisdom your garments of praise. Trent Wildy.